On February 6, 1958, British European Airways Flight 609 carrying 44 people left Belgrade, Yugoslavia. They were returning to Manchester after a European Cup match. The team was full of promise. Manchester United, under manager Sir Matt Busby, had become the pride of England. Their youthful squad, the Busby Babes, represented not just a football club, but the future of British football. On board the plane were 21 players, 3 coaches, 7 journalists, and 3 supporters. Among them were some of the biggest stars in English football: Duncan Edwards, Roger Byrne, Mark Jones, Eddie Coleman, David Pegg, and Tommy Taylor. Their average age was just 21. Now, on this seemingly ordinary flight, their average lifespan would drop to 22. As the plane made its way back to Manchester, it stopped in Munich for refueling. That's where everything began to unravel. Munich airport was covered in snow. Conditions were harsh. Visibility was poor and the runway was filled with slush. The plane touched down at 5:46 p.m. local time, taxied to the main apron, and then to the dispersal point. The plane stayed on the ground for about 20 minutes. The passengers disembarked, and many went into the terminal to get warm and have something to eat. When they returned to the aircraft, they were told that they would be departing shortly. However, they had to wait another half an hour, because the aircraft had to wait for dicing. The dicing process took around 10 minutes. During this time, the passengers waited impatiently inside the aircraft. At 6:30 p.m., the pilot announced over the public address system that they would be leaving soon. 10 minutes later, the passengers were asked to fasten their seatbelts. Shortly after, the aircraft began to taxi towards the runway. As they approached the threshold of the runway, they were held in position to allow another aircraft to land. The plane sat there for about 10 minutes, then moved forward and began to accelerate. A few seconds later, the plane was going at a speed of 80 miles per hour. It rotated and headed down the runway. But the slush on the runway slowed the plane. The aircraft never gained enough lift, and after traveling 3/4 of the runway, it ran out of pavement and skidded off to the right. The aircraft tore through a fence and crashed into a nearby house. At 6:51 p.m. local time, the plane split into two, bursting into flames. The first explosion ignited the fuel in the wings and fuselage. The second explosion occurred when the oxygen cylinders exploded in the rear fuselage. It must have been hell on earth for these poor souls. Survivors stumbled out of the wreckage, bleeding, shocked, and frozen by the bitter cold. Of the 44 people on board, 23 lost their lives. Among them were 8 Manchester United players: Duncan Edwards, Roger Byrne, Mark Jones, Eddie Coleman, David Pegg, and Tommy Taylor. The other 2 were the club secretary and a journalist. Duncan Edwards, one of the brightest talents England had ever seen, initially survived, but he died later in hospital. He was only 21. Also dead was 25-year-old keeper Harry Gregg, who was celebrated for trying to save the babies from the crashed plane. 8 other players and 5 others were seriously injured. Manager Sir Matt Busby was critically injured and twice given his last rites, but he miraculously survived. 3 of the 4 pilots on board also survived. News of the crash sent shockwaves across Britain. Within hours, the Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, was informed. The following morning, thousands of distraught fans gathered outside Old Trafford. News spread quickly, despite the lack of information from the club or the press. The true extent of the disaster became clear as the day wore on. By the evening, newsreels showed the extent of the tragedy. The nation watched in disbelief as they mourned the loss of the young players. In total, 21 people lost their lives in the Munich air crash. 8 were from Manchester United, 3 were journalists, and 10 were from the crew and the passengers of the aircraft. Now, here's what I want you to do. For a moment, forget about football. Forget about sports. Imagine that this plane crash happened today. Now, if a similar incident happened, which players would be on that plane? Which staff would be on that plane? Who would be reporting on that plane? Who would be covering it? What if one of your favorite players was on that plane and never came home? What if someone that you know, someone that you love, was on that plane and never came home? How would you feel? How would you cope? Well, the people of Manchester coped with the worst possible outcome. They lost 8 of their best-loved players, their secretary, their manager, and part of their soul. So now let's talk about football. At the time, Manchester United were at the top of the English football pyramid. They were playing attractive attacking football. They were led by a young and charismatic manager, Sir Matt Busby, who built his team around a group of talented youngsters. This team, known as the Busby Babes, played an exciting brand of football that captivated audiences. The team was blessed with exceptional talent. Goalkeeper Harry Gregg was widely regarded as one of the best in the country. Defenders such as Bill Fowkes and the Munich 8 Roger Byrne were solid and dependable. In midfield, the legendary Duncan Edwards orchestrated the play with brilliance. Up front, the dynamic duo of Dennis Viola and Tommy Taylor formed a formidable partnership that terrorized opposing defenses. Together, they won the FA Cup in 1956 and 1957. They were on course to dominate English football for years to come. But sadly, that was not to be. The Munich air crash devastated the club. In the aftermath of the tragedy, the club was on the brink of collapse. The surviving members of the team struggled to come to terms with the loss of their friends and teammates. Manager Sir Matt Busby, who had been seriously injured himself, battled to save the club from extinction. But the road to recovery was long and arduous. Against all odds, though, the club persevered. They rebuilt their team, bringing in new talent such as Bobby Charlton and George Best, and in 1963, they won the FA Cup once again. This victory was a tribute to the fallen players and a symbol of the club's resilience. But the scars of Munich never truly faded. Every year on the anniversary of the crash, the club and the city of Manchester come together to pay their respects to the fallen. And the memory of the Munich 8 continues to inspire generations of football fans. But what caused this disaster? The investigation into the crash revealed a series of factors that contributed to the tragedy. The report highlighted the challenges faced by pilots during bad weather conditions, the importance of aircraft maintenance, and the role of airport management in ensuring safety. One of the key findings was that the aircraft had not been properly diced prior to takeoff, which reduced its ability to gain sufficient speed for lift. Additionally, the runway conditions were not adequately monitored, contributing to the plane's inability to accelerate properly. The report also examined the pilot's decisions and actions leading up to the crash. While it did not find any fault with their technical abilities, suggested that they may have been unaware of the significance of the dicing fluid that had been applied to the aircraft. Now, the crash had a profound impact on the future of aviation. It led to the introduction of new safety regulations, improved weather monitoring systems, and stricter maintenance protocols. These measures were aimed at preventing similar tragedies from occurring and ensuring the safety of air travel. Today, the story of the Munich 8 is remembered through various memorials and tributes. At the crash site, there is a memorial garden dedicated to the victims. In Manchester, a statue stands in their honor at the National Football Museum. And every year on the anniversary of the crash, fans gather to pay their respects. The Munich air crash remains one of the darkest moments in football history. The loss of these talented young players and the club's subsequent struggles serve as a reminder of the fragility of life and the power of tragedy to unite a community in grief. Despite the immense sorrow, the club and its fans have shown remarkable resilience. The story of the Munich 8 continues to inspire, and the legacy of those lost lives on in the hearts of Manchester United supporters. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoyed this, please share it with a friend. It really helps me out. See you next time.